Throughout its 235 years of existence, the Supreme Court has seen 17 separate Chief Justices, and out of that number, one name tends to stand out. Hi, my name is Devin Ray, and in this film, we are going to walk through the legend, lifetime, and legacy of John Marshall, the fourth and arguably the most preeminent Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. We will be tackling Marshall's own backstory, the events and decisions that put his name in the history books, his personal philosophies and opinions, the shortcomings that made him no better than the rest, and lastly, how, or if, we should carry on his legacy today. But before we carry on, I would like to introduce to you my primary resource for this presentation. This resource is titled Without Precedent: Chief Justice John Marshall and His Times. It's written by Joel Richard Paul, a law professor at University of California, San Francisco. This biography has many positive reviews, including from the Western New England University and the Christian Science Monitor, for its accuracy, save for a few aspects. Unfortunately, like many others do, this biography has to sacrifice accuracy for praise of the subject. Paul often overlooks Marshall's relationships with slavery, and he paints the Republicans as the enemy in this book. So with that notice, we'll be going forward carefully and try to be as unbiased as possible. Now, on to the beginning. John Marshall's story started in Fauquier County, a rural frontier in Virginia, an hour southwest of where Washington, D.C. now is. He was the first of 15 siblings, born on September 24, 1755. When the Revolutionary War began in 1775, a 20-year-old Marshall volunteered to join the Continental Army, seeing action in Valley Forge alongside his role models General Washington and Lieutenant General Steuben. In 1779, the lack of soldiers caused Marshall to be temporarily dismissed, so in the meantime, he enrolled in William and Mary Law School in Williamsburg in 1780. Marshall left after only 6 weeks of formal education with a license to begin practicing law. After a bit more action in the Continental Army again, Marshall resigned from military service in 1781. He ran for the Virginia House of Delegates in 1782 and pursued Mary Willis, or more commonly known as Polly, Ambler. Marshall quickly began to climb the rungs of respect in law and politics, and was well known for his talents and character. He argued in favor of the Constitution's ratification in Virginia's convention in 1788, and he was a noteworthy representative of the Virginian Federalists during the Janney Affair. He ended up being elected into the Virginia House of Delegates once more in 1795. Marshall's next major appointment was to the position of one of 3 American envoys to France in 1797. The negotiations, however, failed. The envoys refused to pay the French foreign minister the bribe that he said was due. The envoys' correspondence to the United States at the time was soon made public and known as the XYZ Papers, which sparked outrage among Americans and made many perceive John Marshall as a hero. After his return, Marshall served in 1800 as Secretary of State to President Adams, and as a final act in his presidency, Adams nominated Marshall for the Chief Justice position which had opened up, and so Marshall took the position and he didn't leave it until his death on July 6, 1835. At this point in time, history turned its eyes onto the great Chief Justice. When Marshall entered the Supreme Court, it didn't even have the prestige for its own courthouse, and the cases it heard were insignificant. But the bond Marshall created with his colleagues made everything a little bit easier. Throughout his 34-year tenure, a whopping 1,042 of the 1,129 opinions the Marshall Court delivered were unanimous. Even today, historians are wondering, how did he do it? To start off, Marshall was a pragmatist. He dealt with his cases based on conditions rather than possibilities. Next, he was optimistic. Marshall got along really well with people and respected them, even some political enemies. Lastly, Marshall was a moderate Federalist. Although he believed in supremacy of the federal government, he often sought for compromise with Republicans around him, and he led a less luxurious life than other Federalists. But even with all that said, it's pretty clear that John Marshall, a white Virginian, only paid well to his own. Although he claimed to condemn slavery, Marshall was far from an abolitionist. He owned and traded slaves for profit and ruled against their natural rights and Supreme Court opinions. He did this because he believed that obedience to the law took greater priority than morality. Marshall also tended to be overly partisan, attacking Republican ideals and states' rights when he got a chance to. Lastly, evidence suggests that Marshall asked his brother to perjure himself or lie in court during Marbury v. Madison, a case the Chief Justice was actually directly affiliated with, but could not testify in himself due to his position. So with all these impurities and flaws, does the fourth Chief Justice really deserve the honor he gets today? In truth, history is a collection of those who do great things, whether those things be great charities or great evils. I believe we should all regard the Chief Justice with some amount of respect and remember his human flaws as a part of his character. Marshall's legacy should be honored at some amount for all his contributions to the strength of the nation, but maybe nothing more. No human is or ever was perfect, but that shouldn't be a grounds to deny appreciation for the good that someone did. Just like slavery, John Marshall was a vital element to the history and truth of the United States, making him worth remembering and keeping in the textbook. Thank you all so much for watching this film. I hope you learned something, whether it's about John Marshall or the workings of American history or something else. I know I certainly did. So again, thank you, and please stay curious.